Hydropneumatic suspension has been a technical highlight of big Citroens ever since the legendary DS, which debuted way back in 1955. For more than half a century of history, this system has been modernized and improved many times. On the Citroen C5, which appeared in the fall of 2000, the third generation of the suspension was installed, Hydractive 3, capable of changing the ground clearance in the range from 90 to 230 millimeters. It has become structurally simpler and therefore more durable than its predecessors, and the manufacturer gave a guarantee for it for 5 years or 200,000 kilometers. However, more on that later. In the rear suspension, trailing arm roller bearings are wedged at the 80th thousand. If you hear a characteristic creak from the bowels of the chassis, change the bearings for 990 rubles urgently. Otherwise, in a couple of months they will break their seats, and they will have to be changed along with expensive levers. Repair will pull 18,000 rubles. In order for the bearings to live as long as possible, it is necessary to monitor the condition of their anthers. Body. The car was offered as a hatchback, which looks like a sedan, and as a practical, but more attractive station wagon. I must say that the Citroen C5 did not differ in a well-designed design. For the characteristic facial expression, domestic wits even called it a fish. The situation was partially corrected by a restyling carried out at the end of 2004, when the front end and stern were seriously changed. On a Citroen C5 with swivel xenon headlights, the head optics washer mechanism gets stuck with age and the plugs that close the nozzles are often lost. However, this is a disease of all foreign cars operated on Russian roads. It is much worse if, due to moisture, the xenon headlight ignition unit turns off. In this case, repairs may require about 12,000 rubles. The used Citroen C5 can be found both in the minimum level of equipment and stuffed to the fullest. The basic version of X included ABS with brake force distribution along the axles, 6 airbags, electric front windows and heated mirrors, as well as air conditioning, a stabilization system, cruise control and Bel-Air interior. The SX version additionally had a hydropneumatic suspension, with engines more powerful than 130 horsepower, electric rear windows, climate control, an onboard computer and fog lights. There was also an extensive list of options. Engine. Gasoline engines were installed on the Citroen C5, 4-cylinder 1.8-liter, 116 horsepower, and 2.0-liter, 136 and 140 horsepower, as well as a 3-liter V6, 207 horsepower. Turbo diesels were represented by 4s with a volume of 2.0 liters, 90 and 109 horsepower, and 2.2 liters, 133 horsepower. The standard transmission is a 5-speed manual. With all units, except for the 90 horsepower turbo diesel, a 4-band automatic was offered. After restyling in 2005, the 2-liter engine acquired direct fuel injection and began to produce 143 horsepower. In the range of turbo diesels, units with a volume of 1.6 liters, 110 horsepower, and 2.0 liters, 138 horsepower, appeared, and the 2.2-liter was removed. The top V6 was already equipped with a 6-band automatic transmission, and the 6-speed mechanics was intended for a 138 horsepower turbo diesel. The 2-liter EW10D engine, 140 and 143 horsepower, with direct fuel injection is very demanding on the quality of gasoline. Therefore, in Russian conditions, the nozzles of the injection system, from 11,500 rubles, do not last long. In addition, spare parts for the repair of this motor are quite difficult to find. The most massive engine for the Citroen C5 is a 2-liter petrol, 136 horsepower, with distributed fuel injection. On the first machines, the motor had a problem with the cold start, but it was quickly solved by reprogramming the engine control unit. Radiators do not withstand reagents, which are poured in abundance on Russian roads in winter. During operation, every 2 to 3 years or 40 to 60,000 kilometers it is recommended to clean, 1,500 to 2,000 rubles, the throttle valve and the idle valve. Of the chronic malfunctions, we note the lower engine mount that fails by 70 to 90,000 kilometers, 3,800 rubles. Around the same time, the rear crankshaft oil seal begins to flow. And after 100,000 kilometers, you need to be ready to replace the oxygen sensor, 4,300 rubles. About 150,000 kilometers in our conditions released to the catalyst. If there is no desire to spend 25,000 rubles on a new part, you can contact the garage masters who carry out the operation to remove it with the firmware of the control unit. Ignition coils often fail, 1680 rubles. In order for them to live longer, we recommend changing the candles in a preventive manner every 20 to 30,000 kilometers. The 1.8-liter engine is similar in design to the 2-liter, and they have common problems. Is that the base engine under the hood of used C5 is much less common, same as V6. However, the flagship power unit is almost devoid of childhood illnesses, only it's inconvenient to change the candles of the right row. But the failure of various electronic sensors and ignition coils is not widespread. Quite often come across on the market in turbo diesel Citroen C5. After 150,000 kilometers, injection nozzles, 15,860 rubles each, and high-pressure fuel pumps, repairs from 35,000 rubles, can mope. Transmission. On a used Citroen C5 with a manual transmission, after 100,000 kilometers of run, the cables, for 1,800 rubles, of the gear shift drive have to be changed due to the breakage of their plastic tips. By this time, when you press the clutch pedal, the release bearing usually begins to speak. It is better not to delay the replacement, otherwise you will have to face an early clutch update. Moreover, the mechanism will need to be changed complete with the driven disc and a basket, and this is at least 10,000 rubles. At risk in the bearing of the drive shaft of the right wheel. The infamous automatic AL4 will require repair by 100,000 kilometers, from 30,000 rubles. He does not like sudden cold starts and is sensitive to the oil level, which is checked at the service through the control plug. The automatic transmission does not have a dipstick. Quadruple automatic, produced by the PSA Peugeot Citroën concern with the AL4 index, does not differ in high reliability. By 80 to 100,000 kilometers, as a rule, the valve body fails. From 15,000 rubles, the gearbox control unit fails or becomes unusable. But the iron itself can last even up to 200,000 kilometers. Much more attractive in terms of durability are the 6-speed ZF automatics that were installed on modifications with petrol V6s. True, there are noticeably fewer such copies on the secondary market than cars with 2-liter engines, as well as turbo diesel versions that were equipped with Japanese Aisin transmissions. These boxes are also devoid of most of the sores of the French-made unit and are considered quite reliable. Chassis and body. At the base spring suspension for the Citroen C5, on average, after 50,000 kilometers, the struts and stabilizer bushings will be asked to rest. Replacement, from 3,000 rubles. Ball bearings and silent blocks of the front levers, 3,500 rubles on both sides, take care of about 100,000 kilometers and even more. It depends on the driving style. Wheel bearings can withstand approximately the same amount, which, to the delight of the owners, are changed separately from the hub and cost only 2,500 rubles each. In the rear suspension, you should pay attention to the trailing arms, which require attention after 70 to 90,000 kilometers. Steering. In steering, after 60 to 80,000 kilometers, tie rods and tips will be marked with knocks. Replacement of parts, 7,000 rubles. And the rail itself costs an average of 35,000 rubles. True, she lives up to 200,000 kilometers. The C5 is more conservative on the inside than on the outside. The quality of materials is at a decent level. And there are almost no crickets in the cabin, and over the years there are no more of them. Suspension. The Hydractive 3 suspension isn't as bad as you might think. Instead of springs and shock absorbers, it has hydraulic spheres and racks, respectively. They withstand, as a rule, up to 150,000 kilometers. Spheres, there are 5 or 6 of them, depending on the configuration, an average of 3,000 rubles each, are a ball filled with special LDS synthetics and compressed nitrogen. It gradually escapes through the membrane separating liquid and gas, and the suspension becomes very rigid. But you can't drive even with one faulty sphere, then the bypass valves and other Hydractive 3 parts quickly become unusable. The hydraulic pump has its own electric motor and serves up to 200,000 kilometers. The Citroen C5 rear sofa is comfortable even for 3 passengers, which is largely facilitated by the absence of a floor tunnel. For ease of loading on the right wall of the trunk there is a button that controls the hydropneumatic suspension. Body Citroen C5 with a durable galvanized coating and good color resists corrosion. True, the elements of chrome trim quickly surrender to rust. On the first cars, the rear windows burst, which were later replaced with reinforced ones. The windshield, 8,900 rubles, does not differ in hardness either, on which scratches appear after 3 or 4 years. In winter, it is easy to damage the mechanism of power windows. When lowering the frozen glass, the plastic fasteners break. There are also electrical problems. Both modifications of the C5 are practical. Separate rear seats fold down, and the trunk is equipped with a mounting net. Modifications. The Citroen C5 station wagon, which was traditionally called Break, appeared a few months later than the hatchback. Its premiere took place in March 2001. With the same wheelbase, the rear overhang of the C5 Break is increased by 139 mm and the height by 49 mm. Accordingly, the curb weight increased by 49 kilograms. A notable detail of the station wagon is the huge crescent-shaped rear lights framing the tailgate, which is equipped with a power lock. Moreover, for loading small items, it is enough to lift only the glass. It opens separately from the tailgate. In technical terms, the station wagon completely repeats the hatchback. But the maximum trunk volume of the C5 Break, with the rear seats folded down, reaches an impressive 1660 liters, mainly due to the compact rear suspension. Before restyling, French cars have always stood out for their extravagant, one might even say futuristic design. But this hardly applies to the Citroen C5. His boring, washed-ashore appearance attracted few people, probably affected by the fact that the development of the machine was carried out in record time. So we got an average-weighted appearance of a modern car by the standards of that time. Model year 2001 models have a sluggish, albeit original front end with large headlight eyes, a limp grille and a modest double chevron emblem. From the rear, the C5 also looked gaudy and looked like a Toyota Camry, which also did not represent a piece of design art. But the interior was initially very good and differs from the post-styling mainly in a different design of the dashboard. And the quality of materials and execution is at a quite decent level.